I was the kind of man who believed in love without conditions. I met Lena during my final year of university. She had this warm smile and sharp wit that could disarm anyone in seconds. What began as casual conversations quickly turned into late-night calls, surprise visits, and plans for a shared future. I was completely taken by her. Within a year, we got married. It was simple, intimate, and felt right. Everyone around us said we were perfect together, and I believed them. The first few years were everything I thought love was supposed to be. We cooked together, traveled on spontaneous road trips, laughed at each other's terrible jokes. I trusted her with everything, my finances, my insecurities, my dreams. Lena was always supportive, always encouraging. She made me feel like the luckiest man alive. I worked hard, often taking extra shifts to ensure we had a comfortable life. And she made sure our home always felt warm and welcoming. But slowly, things began to shift. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when. It started with small changes. Her phone never left her hand. She became slightly distant, less engaged in our conversations. I assumed it was stress from her new job, or maybe just the routine of life setting in. I never thought to question her loyalty. If anything, I blamed myself for not being more attentive or romantic. I began doing more, planned date nights, left notes for her to find, bought flowers just because. She always thanked me with a smile, but it didn't feel real anymore. Her eyes didn't hold the same spark, and her touch lacked warmth. But I held on, convincing myself that love goes through phases and that we'd find our rhythm again. After all, I married her because I believed she was my person, my forever. Sometimes she'd work late. Sometimes she'd travel for short conferences. I never once doubted her, never questioned her absences. Trust wasn't something I rationed, I gave it fully. And maybe that was my biggest mistake. I lived in this illusion, telling myself that we were just going through a rough patch, that every couple had ups and downs. I didn't know I was the only one fighting for us. There were moments where I'd catch her staring off blankly, or she'd flinch when I tried to hug her unexpectedly. But I dismissed it. I didn't want to entertain the possibility that the woman I loved more than anything might be hiding something. I chose to believe the lie, because it was easier than facing the truth. I thought I was protecting our marriage, but I was really protecting myself from the pain I wasn't ready to feel. It all changed the day I found a hotel receipt tucked into her coat pocket. It wasn't addressed to us, nor did it match any trip she had mentioned. My heart didn't race. It sank. I stared at the paper for minutes, trying to make sense of it, convincing myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was from work. Maybe she booked it for a friend. Anything but the obvious. I placed it back exactly where I found it, pretending I never saw it. But something shifted in me. I started noticing more. The way she quickly turned her phone over when I walked in. How she barely looked up from the screen. Her laugh, once genuine and shared, was now quieter, reserved for someone else. She became increasingly protective of her space. Her phone, her bag, her schedule. Suddenly, everything had invisible walls. I began to doubt my own instincts. Was I being paranoid? Was this what love reduced a man to, second-guessing his sanity? I watched her more closely, listening to her excuses with growing silence. She started using work as a shield more often. Weekend trips that didn't add up. Late meetings that stretched beyond reason. I started making mental notes, timelines, gaps in her stories. I wasn't trying to catch her. I was trying to prove myself wrong. One night, she came home hours late. I asked casually how her day was. Her answer was quick, vague. Exhausting, she said, without looking at me. That's when I knew. It wasn't the receipt. It wasn't the phone. It was the tone in her voice, detached, rehearsed, void of emotion. She wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than gut feelings. I remembered an old tablet she once synced her phone with. I found it buried in the drawer, dead and dusty. I charged it, powered it on, and everything poured in: messages, photos, locations. I read the texts, saw the dates, and there it was. Her affair laid out in time-stamped proof. His name was Adam. A colleague. They met during conferences, meetings, and sometimes in our own city while I was at work or asleep. I sat there for hours, reading, rereading. Each message felt like a punch. Not just the intimacy, but the way she spoke about me, dismissively, like I was a background character in her life. She even joked about how easy it was to lie to me. That was the moment my heartbreak turned to quiet rage. I wasn't angry at her cheating. I was angry that I had given everything to someone who saw me as nothing. Still, I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I simply sat there, my world shattered, but my resolve forming. I knew then that I could never go back, not to her, not to us, not to who I used to be. I knew I had to be smart. Emotional revenge fades, but calculated silence lasts. I began preparing quietly. No dramatic confrontations, no desperate pleas. I backed up everything, screenshots of messages, timestamps, photos, even hotel bookings. I met with a lawyer, explained everything, and made sure my financials were protected. I stopped investing energy in saving something that had already been dead for years. At home, I played my role. I was calm, polite, predictable. I stopped asking questions. She noticed the change, but didn't know why. Maybe she thought I'd grown distant. Maybe she thought I was slipping away just like she had. It didn't matter. I was already gone in my mind. Every word she said after that felt staged. I stopped believing anything that came from her mouth. But I let her think she still had me wrapped around her finger. I took the time to rebuild myself. I went back to the gym, started sleeping better, eating better. I reconnected with people I had neglected during the years I spent trying to hold our marriage together. I read more, worked more, smiled more, but never at her. My energy shifted, and while she was too busy sneaking around, I was becoming the version of myself I should have never abandoned. When I was ready, I set the trap. One evening, I calmly laid everything out in front of her. No anger, just facts. Her face drained of color. She couldn't speak. For the first time, she realized she had no control. I told her I knew everything. Every lie, every meeting, every betrayal. She stammered, tried to justify it, tried to cry. But the tears didn't move me. I had cried enough for the both of us already. She asked for forgiveness.
Said it was a mistake.
That it didn't mean anything. But the truth was, it meant everything. It meant every "I love you," she whispered, was empty. Every touch, every smile, every promise, fake. She didn't cheat once. She cheated consistently, knowingly, with intention. That wasn't a mistake. That was a decision. Over and over again. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I just looked at her and told her it was over. I wasn't asking for an explanation. I wasn't offering a second chance. She could keep her excuses. I was done. I told her I'd be moving out within the week, and we'd go through the divorce quietly, cleanly, and without drama. And I walked away from that conversation with something she no longer had: dignity. That moment was my closure. No revenge fantasy could top the power of walking away without letting her destroy what was left of me. She thought I'd be broken, but I wasn't. I was free. And sometimes, silence is the loudest form of justice. After I moved out, everything felt quiet, almost too quiet. But that silence gave me clarity. I rented a small apartment, nothing fancy, just enough to start over. I didn't take much with me. Just my clothes, my documents, and the lessons burned into my memory. She tried reaching out at first, calls, texts, even emails filled with apologies and regrets. I didn't respond. Not once. She had already said everything I needed to hear through her betrayal. People around us were shocked. Friends who thought we were the perfect couple didn't understand how it fell apart. I didn't bother explaining. I wasn't interested in defending myself or exposing her. Some friends distanced themselves, unsure how to act. Others stayed and showed real loyalty. I kept my circle small and honest. No more pretending. I didn't need sympathy, just space to breathe again. The divorce was finalized within a few months. She didn't fight it, probably out of guilt or fear that I'd expose what I knew. I didn't want revenge in the courts. I wanted peace. I gave her what she valued more than love: freedom. and I reclaimed mine. I walked out of that courtroom lighter, not because I had won, but because I had let go of everything that weighed me down. Life after betrayal isn't about erasing the past. It's about rebuilding with intention. I focused on my work, poured myself into my craft, traveled solo for the first time in years. I met people who didn't know my story, who saw me not as a husband scorned, but just as a man figuring it out. And in that space, I began healing, not by forgetting but by remembering who I was before I was lied to. I learned how to trust myself again. I stopped second-guessing my instincts, stopped ignoring red flags. I understood that love should never come at the cost of your self-respect. I had given everything to someone who saw me as replaceable, but I was no longer the man who needed validation from someone else. I found strength in my solitude, and eventually, in my own company. One evening, I got a message from her. Just one sentence. "I miss what we had." I didn't reply, not because I was bitter, but because I didn't miss any of it. I had finally accepted the truth. What we had was never real if one person had to carry all the love. She made her choices, and I made mine. I chose to move forward, not to dwell, not to hate, but to live better. Some betrayals feel like the end of everything, but sometimes they're the beginning of something more honest. I don't regret loving her. I regret not loving myself enough to walk away sooner. But I did eventually, and that made all the difference.